One. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Horror Movie Reviews. Today, I am joined by Jordana from Pretty Killer Podcast, and we're going to be talking the 2022 thriller / I'm calling it horror film, Don't Worry, Darling. Thanks for coming. I'm super excited to talk about this movie.
I've been waiting to do this. So excited.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about Pretty Killer Podcast and what you do over there?
So I started it in 2022 and I started my page, and then 7 months later, I actually dropped an episode. So it's the longest, oh, hey, it's coming. And then it finally did. I'd like to say that I planned that, and I totally did not, but I'm happy the way it panned out because I definitely got to meet some awesome people and get, a good group of people that actually wanted to listen to it. And season 1 is already done. Season 2 is coming in spring 2023. Yep. And then we just started, Sam and I from To Be or Not to Be. We just started another podcast, Feature Creatures, DTF, Drinks, Tangents, and Flicks.
Oh my God.
My husband, when I told him, he was like, Damn. I'm like, no, it has to, we had to throw in the drinks, the tangents, and the flicks, because Sam and I, our episodes were 3.5 hours long. So.
Oh, I get that. Yeah. I think it's that's so funny. I love the name. That's so funny.
Thank you. So that will be coming soon. The actual audio is done. He's editing the video because we're doing a YouTube channel too.
Okay.
So that's, pretty much what's going on with me.
Yeah. I'm going to link all of the information for the podcast in this episode, as well as socials for Pretty Killer. The name, I love that. So I actually made my socials 4 or 5 months before I made my channel. So I didn't do anything. I just had social media. That was it. And then I tried to get used to being able to post on there before I started doing anything else like YouTube or whatever. So
it's hard because you go in thinking okay, it's easy to talk to people and it's easy to talk about things that you enjoy. But when you actually go and do it, when I started recording, I was in my own head and I'm like, I don't like how I sound. I don't like how I'm presenting.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when I finally did it, I'm like, maybe it would be better just to have people on and talk to them. And that seemed to work. And then I didn't really have a formula for if it was going to be reviews, if it was going to be what the hell it was going to be. So I just kind of would do random things and different, ways to do it. And it seems to work. So I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah. So when I first started, I was pretty stiff and it was just me. Same thing. Yeah. And it took me a little while to just be okay, I'm just going to be myself. Yeah. And that, for the record, in case you're new here, is not professional or put together in any way, shape, or form. It's a disaster most of the time, but I edited it all out and it comes out fine.
It's great.
No, I was similar. Yeah. Editing is
we had this editing discussion, and there's been times where I'm just the dog's barking, all this stuff's happening. I'm I'm leaving it because I do not want to even stress anymore on that technical aspect. And a lot of people, when you talk to people, a lot of people said they would rather listen to an organic, raw.
That's episode. True.
You know what I mean? Compared to having
exactly right.
Completely well-oiled, which, sometimes I wish that it would be like that. But other times I think that it's nice to have it be you're talking to friends. So.
And that's that was actually, I was going to say, that's actually one of the best compliments I ever got. Was a friend of mine that I now have an ongoing collaboration with had actually, one of the first things he ever said about the channel or the podcast, whichever one he was listening to first, he was it's like sitting in a living room and talking with friends. And I'm like, that's the goal. That's the energy I'd like to. So I filmed a found footage Friday episode, 2 episodes together the other day. And there was a bug in here. And I'm I'm not oh my God, bugs. But if they got wings, I am out. If they fly, they have the advantage. You can have the house. I'm done. Yeah. So, and my co-host was oh, you should leave all of this in. I'm I'm not leaving all of it in, but I'll leave some of it. It was embarrassing. It was flying and it was hitting the stupid light. And I didn't know what kind of bug it was. It was could have been a man-eater. I don't know. But I was
it could have been a wasp. It could have been something that was going to sting you.
Oh, I know. I was so freaked out. And so I like turned the light off and it fell. And then I was like, okay, now I have to find it. It was anyway, it's a long story, but it was a whole thing. But I ended up having to cut like 20 minutes out of our video 2 different times because I lost it and then
Yeah.
I found it again. And I was like, I've got to do something about this situation. But it was like horrible. Like I wasn't going to leave all of it in, but I do think it was kind of funny to leave some of it in. So that's what I ended up doing.
I wish you would have just like kept those pieces and did like a special
Oh, I
and left it because
Starship Troopers episode of Voices from the Mausoleum.
I would watch it. I don't know about everyone else watching, but I would totally watch you be pissed
Oh
off
my
as fuck.
God. I came in here with like a bottle of cleaner and
Mhm.
I was like spraying it to like knock it down so it couldn't fly at me, right? And then I was like realized that like the cleaners that I use are like non-toxic. So it was like doing nothing. And I was like,
Yeah,
this
he's
is
getting gas.
ridiculous.
He's going around smelling like a sunflower, and he's just like,
I know. This is so stupid. I was so pissed.
I would
I
wait.
was so mad.
Just send it to me because that will be like my laugh of the day. It's just to watch it.
Oh my God, send you the raw video. I probably saw it. It's a disaster. Like, and it happens twice. And so it's like 2 different times I had to like stop. And then Tom like outs me in the video. He's like, Angel doesn't want people to know she's scared of bugs. I was like, first of all, I'm not scared of bugs. I'm scared of bugs that can fly. There's a
It's
difference.
a
There's a
huge
distinction there.
I never used to be scared of bugs or like insects, but I got stung in Walmart when I was going for a pizza dough, and a wasp or something stung me in my underarm, and I went back and I knocked over the display of cookies, and I'm like, first off, I want to see that back because I was like, fuck in Walmart, and everyone's looking at me, and my arm's just like blown up, and I have it like a stinger in me. And then I was so mad. I'm like, where did it come from in Walmart?
Yeah, I don't yeah, I'm like I'm good with like most things,
Yeah,
but if they can fly, I'm serious. Like I am out.
yeah,
The only flying bugs that don't bother me is like moths. Moths don't freak me out, but like beetles are terrifying up close.
yeah.
I don't like stink bugs fly,
Oh, I hate stink bugs.
roaches fly. Like there, it
Yeah,
could be any number of things. And my
that's not
point
me.
is that like it's terrifying. And I was human enough to leave some of it in for comedic elements at
Yeah.
least. It's so stupid. My dumbass. I wish like I may have to send you some clips because this is
You
like
need to. I'm gonna buy
me like hunting down this bug with like a bottle of like safe cleaner that like a kid could probably drink and it wouldn't even make them sick. Like it's so stupid.
he's probably like getting his wings all clean, like,
I know. He's like, oh, thanks. Now I smell like whatever. I don't even know what it smells like. It's like linen or some stupid shit like that.
but it's the
God.
effort. At least you tried to kill it. So let's hope we don't get
Yeah.
any bugs tonight.
Yeah, so far.
When
That
did you jinx that?
now I'm gonna be paranoid. Oh, okay. So we are talking, don't worry, darling. So this is you can actually still watch this on HBO right now. This has a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, a 3.6 out of 5 on Vudu, a 66% on the Google, 74% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll take it.
No.
I'm going to go into IMDb because that synopsis is like a chunky. Here we go. This is much better. Okay. A 1950s housewife living with her husband in a utopian experimental community begins to worry that his glamorous community could be hiding disturbing secrets,
Mhm.
which, you know,
There were
uh,
some secrets.
utopia does not come without cost, ladies and gents. If it seems too good to be true.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had to rate this out of 10, what would you give this?
Oh man, this is like for me,
Mhm.
I was so pleasantly surprised and so happy
Yes.
with it. And I'm
Yes.
not going to give it like a full 10, but I'm going to give it a solid 9. Like I've watched this numerous times. I love this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a 9 for me too. It made my top 10 for 2022. I I knew I was gonna like it. I did. I had a feeling. The
Yeah.
cast, Florence from Midsummer, I love her. I
Yep.
think, I thought the cast looked really great. I thought it looked very intriguing. I was thinking psychological, kind of whatever. I thought, okay, this is gonna be really cool.
Yep.
And then I watched it, and the first thought I had after I finished watching it is, why are people talking about Barbarian and not this movie? That was
Yeah.
my very first thought. I was like, this film needs to be being talked about. I absolutely like I loved it. Like I was pleasantly surprised by it. I think I know there's been a few people that have argued that it's not horror. I wholeheartedly disagree.
Me too.
This is definitely like more thriller, psychological horror. Sure. I mean, but definitely still horror. But I loved this. I thought it was really good.
It was, like, visually stunning. Like, every dress that she wore, I was like, "I want that." Like, and I you know what I mean? Like, so just so girl it just appealing to the eye. I loved all of that. I thought, like you said, the cast was perfect. I didn't really, like, feed into the drama that was, before the movie with, Shia LaBeouf and all that because I didn't
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't paying too much
yeah.
attention to it, but I knew I was gonna watch it either way. And
Yeah.
then the buzz around it just about, like, how bad it was, and then when I watched it, I was like, I feel like we're not watching the same movie,
Yeah. I
you know?
agree. Um, yeah, I mean, just quick unspoiled thoughts. Like, what are things? I mean, we talked about the visuals. I also really like the writing, the dialogue, the conversations in this. I
Yeah,
think is a lot of what really cements some of those feelings that you're meant to feel. That happiness for her and her husband, the like distrust of certain people, the
yeah,
anger, the powerlessness, like all of these emotions. I felt with a punch because of the way the dialogue between the characters was written.
absolutely, and I thought, like, the chemistry between the cast was perfect, like,
Oh,
Nick Kroll, it's so weird because when I thought of him in it, I'm like, "So he's definitely gonna be the comedic relief,"
because
you
he's
know?
funny. Yeah.
But, like, even so,
Yeah,
like, I felt like he held his own when it
he
needed to
did.
be
I agree.
serious, do you know what I mean? And, like,
Yeah.
I feel like the delivery of, the thriller parts and that uneasy feel like you said, it was just beautifully written, beautifully shot. I thought there really wasn't a time that you felt like it was in a lull, like, it just kept you knew
No,
it was
I
building to
agree.
something,
Yeah, no, I agree.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, no, and I think, the only other thing I would say that doesn't really spoil anything is this has a lot of like feminist undertones. There's a lot of things that kind of revolve around control and the
Mhm.
roles that men and women play in this concept of control. And I was really surprised how well these messages got communicated
Mhm.
and only seeing it the first time. Like the first time I watched it, I
Yeah,
got more out of it than I've gotten out of most films in one watch. Like I was amazed how much of it was like because it's not so much that it's spoon fed to you because I don't feel that way, but
yeah,
it's just the way they build on top of things as it happens. You're
yeah,
getting the story at a pace that makes sense. You're
yeah,
getting the secrets at a pace that makes sense. And so
mhm,
as it builds, it's just like I got so much out of the story and the messages. And
yeah.
I was like, I remember thinking afterwards, I'm like, brilliant. Like that was so brilliant the way that it was written to be able to do that, to be able to get so much across without shoving it down somebody's throat. Just
And
like
that's
so well done.
what I appreciated because I knew this was not gonna be the norm, like, of what we got in
Yeah.
2022 because I knew we had slashers and we had
Yes.
obscure horror like Barbarian that was just like, you thought it's going one way, it's the other.
Yeah.
And with this one, I'm like, "Okay, there has to be a catch." And I felt like it was so subtle and it was just like you said, it was perfect with
Mhm.
the undertones and just like, I don't know. I think it was beautifully done.
Yeah,
Beautifully.
no, I agree. If you're watching this review and you've not seen Don't Worry Darling, I highly recommend it. It's on HBO Max. We're gonna jump into some spoilers so because there's a lot that I'm sure we want to talk about that'll ruin it if you haven't seen it. So if you haven't, go watch it and then come back and watch the rest of the episode. So this is spoiler section. I always thought it put like a definitive marker of like, yeah. So the first thing I want to ask specifically in regards to the spoiler side of things,
Yeah.
what did you think was actually going on before we get to the like, before we're watching it as viewers and we get to the ending, we see all these things unfold. Like what were you thinking as you're going through this journey without knowing exactly what's going on?
So for me, and I know this is gonna seem like left field, but I really thought it was like some sort of like alien movie. And I know that seems so weird to say, but just the way that the jobs were kind of like, like uniform going to work
Yes.
and where it was and the type of structure it was and
Yep.
just how quiet they were. I'm like, and then the actions within the community. I'm like, this has to be some sort of like alien like, because I felt like it was gonna be kind of like Barbarian, where you're not expecting something and it's gonna happen with,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's
Yeah.
where I was going, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I had a notion of aliens a couple of times too. There were some things specifically that made me feel like that could be where they were going. But
Mhm,
I'll be honest, I also had like this really big fear
mhm.
that it was going to just make her crazy. Because they do that to women in horror movies, right? They make
Yes,
them irrational beings, these crazy, like, people who just like, "Oh, she's actually really sick in an asylum and, like, none of this shit happened." That I was and I got like, there was a certain point, I can't remember, maybe, like, the halfway point, or maybe it was after she goes out where she's not supposed to go for the first time. There's, like,
yeah,
a certain thing that happened that I was kinda like, "Please don't do this to me." Like, I need this to not be one of those films. And I'm thinking with the people involved with the project, probably not, but I
yeah,
wasn't really sure. So I was like really nervous that's what they were going to do. So I was so glad when that wasn't what actually happened.
same.
Because that was like I felt like I didn't really know either. Like I went back and forth a lot because there's a lot of stuff that happens that doesn't make sense.
Yes, and that was the thing I was gonna say, is there's some
Yeah.
things that happen that I was like, "Hmm, this could like, this doesn't make sense of what I'm thinking, but could it be this?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then,
Agreed.
like,
Yeah.
the trolley scene, like, that kind of fed into, like, what I was thinking might be aliens because of
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and I'm like, and when I watched it with my husband, he said the same thing. He's like, "It has to be some sort of," and then he was thinking it was along the lines of, like, are they trying to copy Nope, but then do it, you know what I mean? Like, because that,
Oh.
and that's where my head went to. I'm like, I hope that they don't, like, do, like, this weird object in
Yeah.
that sense. And then, like you said, though, I was like, if they make this that it would nothing happened, that she was crazy, that would have floored me too, because I wanted it to be something different, and what we got, I feel like, was different.
Was with some depth, it had depth
Yeah,
to it. And I think too, like, the other thing I also thought of was I also thought back to, The Village, where, you've got this community that's, like, separated.
yeah,
So I also even thought cult. Like, I was thinking, okay, he's
yeah,
obviously, like, too cleaned up, right? Like we know we can't trust the charismatic like white guy that stands in front and tells people what to do. We don't
yeah,
trust that. That's not good usually. And
yeah,
so it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, maybe it's going to go." And I'm like a sucker for cult stuff. That's cults are naturally creepy. You don't really have to do a whole lot to make them creepy. And I thought, okay, maybe that's where this is going. But
yeah,
then when we got to the thing in the middle of the desert, I guess, or the
mhm.
whatever, I was like, that didn't really fit with the cult thing. I was trying to figure it out. And I love that I couldn't because I watch a lot of movies and
Yes.
I figure out stuff like really quickly sometimes. And I
Mhm.
hate that. But this wasn't like that at all. A lot of stuff happened in this there was no way to predict.
No, and then when you see it unfold,
Yeah.
you're like, "Wow," and, like, even watching the reaction of my husband, because I watched it before he did, so I had to act like I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, "Oh, wait, hold on, what?" You know? And then, because I didn't know if he would enjoy it, but he was like, "I loved it," and when everything was, and he was processing it, he's like, "Holy shit," and to have that reaction from him was awesome, because I'm like, "Okay, at least," like, maybe I was hyping myself up to
Yeah.
really good, and it wasn't. He really enjoyed it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, yeah, I really loved it. And I bought in. I was like mad at myself at the end because I really bought into their love story.
Oh
I
my,
was like, "Oh my god, this is like the perfect couple.
yeah,
How fucking cute are they? They're amazing. I love them so much." And he's trying so hard to toe the line to keep this perfect life, but make her happy. And I'm like, "Oh my god." And I'm like, like I bought into like all of that shit. I bought into all of it. And then so the thing that I thought one secret that comes out later that I
mhm,
thought was really well done was, when it shows, I'm totally forgetting the neighbor's, character name,
um, was it Margaret?
whatever her name is, the
Was
one
it
that also directed or produced the movie, whatever her
Olivia
name is.
Wilde? Yes.
Olivia Wilde.
Yep,
Olivia Wilde's character, like, there was these moments with her kids that I was just like, "Oh my god," like, I bought into all these relationships,
I
and
know.
I think that that's just a further testament to, like, the writing of this film because you really do, and there were moments, I'll be really honest with you, like,
Yeah,
when they take her away
yeah,
when we start really getting clips of like what's actually happening, there
Yep.
were moments where I almost wanted her to just go along with it. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is the perfect life. What are you mad about? You know what I mean? Like there were moments, and I hated myself for feeling that way, but you just see it
Yep.
as this life that they could have together, and it seems, and it's like, but she just kept pushing the buttons, kept reaching, kept trying to find what it was that there's a crack in the perfection, and she knew it.
Yep.
Even there were hints of it even before the other neighbor, the friend that ended up jumping off the roof or whatever.
Yep.
Even before then, she was kind of like, I don't know, like something's weird.
And you could pick up on that too, like when she started doing that. So I'm like, something is definitely strange. And then you kind of saw at the party when that one chick was having her moment, and you're like, okay, so it has to be something within obviously like the wives. So it's the disconnect between the wives and the husbands, clearly. But when you were saying that about just her giving in, I felt that way too. But then I'm like, and it clicked. I'm like, it has to be way more sinister. There has to be something
Has to be.
that is like, because this is perfect, but what's the
Perfect's
catch?
not real, right?
No. And
Yeah.
and to say that too, so and not to like tangent and sidebar, but the
You're
whole
good.
thing with Harry Styles, like I thought he was great.
I thought he did a great job.
Okay, good. Because I'm like, when people are like, oh, his accent was horrible, I'm like, he's fucking like he's British. Like he had an accent. Like I didn't think it was bad.
I didn't think so either. I thought I don't think I felt there was like a single weak performance in any of the cast. I think everybody, even the people that only had a few minutes on
Yeah.
camera,
Hmm.
I think everybody that was meant to get your attention and make you feel things did so very effectively.
Like the
Huh.
doctor, the couples,
Yeah.
it felt like they were all like that was their life. And like when it was supposed to be Shia LaBeouf, not to say that I don't think he would have been good, because I do like Shia LaBeouf, but I think that the casting was perfect, and I think it worked out the way it should, because I thought he was great. Like I loved them, and like even just like his demeanor when he was like
Yeah.
cooking, I'm like, "Hmm, mm, mm." You know, like
Yeah.
of course you would like to have a handsome man cooking. You know what I mean? Like it worked, and
It did.
it's unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, you know?
Yeah, and I think, so when the pieces that start happening, she starts seeing the other girl's reflection when she's doing the ballet thing. The ballet thing was so creepy to me.
Was.
Um, and then like, the glass coming too close. There's a lot of scenes like that that I just thought were shot like so well. I felt like I felt like I could feel the pressure of the glass on my chest. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
was so impactful, and all of those moments where she's going through these things and we're feeling her isolation and her desperation and her sadness and all of these things, like all of those scenes that were like that, those more like psychological crazy scenes,
Yeah.
those were beautifully shot.
I loved them, and I felt like they were very like, feeling the like you said, the emotion of, like,
Yeah.
knowing that something is wrong, like, you could tell, and I
Yeah.
thought that the ballet scenes were very reminiscent of Suspiria in a sense, like,
Yeah.
the way it
Yeah.
was done,
Yeah.
and I liked that because it wasn't,
I
like,
agree. Yeah.
copycatting it, but it had, like, those tones, um,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
just felt for her. You just felt sad because you're like, this is the life that she wants, but she knows that something's wrong. And at
Yeah.
least she's being like true to herself and not conforming and not having someone control it. So,
And then like her like reach is his name Jack? Is the husband's name Jack?
yep,
Is
Jack.
that right? Okay.
Yep,
So when she's like begging him to go with her, and
mhm,
she's like begging him to believe her, begging him to take her side,
yep,
begging him, and like all of these things that we feel when these scenes happen originally,
yep.
they become they hit a lot differently when the which we'll get I know we'll get to, but like the ending when the everything is revealed, thinking back on those scenes makes me want to vomit.
Y yes, because
Like
it's yeah. The thing that bothered me too was the scene after she convinces him to leave, and they're in the car, and he afterwards, and he's crying, and the way he's screaming in the car, and he's like, "Fuck," and,
yeah.
like, feeling it because like, just I don't know. It's just it was so much, and I felt it, and I was just like sad for him, even though I felt like I shouldn't be sad for him,
I know.
and then sad for her, and then when it was like she was back, I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
I guess we're doing this again. Like,
And like,
yeah, back with the friends. Yeah. And the whole like, and this kind of goes back to talking about like these themes of control, because that's like a really common theme in
Mhm.
this film. But when he makes the head guy makes her husband do that dance,
Oh my god, that
I was so uncomfortable. That entire scene was so cringy, effective. Like it's meant to be weird and to make you feel like, okay, what the fuck? But I
yeah,
think that like I was so creeped out by that.
and he made me dizzy because I'm like, how are
Oh,
you
yeah.
doing like that? But I totally felt that. It was like dance puppet. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And I felt the same way, and a lot of the responses was, "Why was that necessary? Why was that in there?" I'm like, I felt like it was perfect in there, that it was
It was.
like, I don't think that they should have cut that, and I don't understand why people didn't enjoy, because it was meant to do something. It wasn't just because it's Harry Styles,
No,
you
it
know?
was meant to show, like exactly like you said, "Here's this ring on fire. I
Yep,
need to see that you'll jump through it for me. I
exactly.
need you to show me that I have your." And this is why I thought cult, because I'm thinking like that's a cult leader thing to test
Totally.
and push people to see how much they can get away with, how much control slash loyalty they can get from you
Yep,
compared to what your loyalty is with your, in that case, his wife, because at
yep,
the time they don't have any kids or anything, so it's just the two of them. But it's like it was just like, and I know like when she gets like overwhelmed with emotion and she like runs off to the bathroom and she's like really upset and all, that their other friend had died already, and she's like
yep,
starting to like really spiral at this point.
mhm.
And Bunny, that's her name.
Yes.
That's Olivia Wilde's character's name. That literally I just gave me. I'm horrible with character names. If you're new here, I'm sorry. It's just the show. I can't help it. So I'm
Um,
horrible with character names. But when she goes to the bathroom and Bunny is literally like, "You should just be happy for your husband." I was like, "Bitch."
I know, I was the same way. I was like, "You're supposed to be her friend, and you're being a crotch." I was pissed. I'm like, "Oh, I don't like her."
I
Yeah.
know. She's like, "Stop. You need to stop it. Stop it." And I'm like,
And
and
then
that was when I was like, "Oh, she knows, like, she knows some shit is up, because she wouldn't be acting that way if she didn't know."
exactly. And then when we get to it, we'll touch back on that. There was a point where I felt bad for her because I didn't like her. But the
Yes, and
end,
I
I
know exactly what you're talking about, yes.
to the point where I got like a little bit like in the throat, and I was like misty-eyed. I'm like, "Man, like it's deep." And okay, so what you were saying about the cult too, it's funny you
Yeah.
say that because of like control and like, when he was pushing the baby. Remember? Because before when she was in
Oh,
the tub, and that was before the big event when he was dancing, when she was in the tub, and he's like,
yeah.
"I think we should try for baby." And she's like, "What?" And he was weird about it. I'm like, so that's either like trap her or for some other motive. Because I'm like, it's weird.
Well, and I think kind of going back to like this, like these like feminism notes that are throughout this film is like a lot of women get put in that position. This pressure to be this,
Yeah.
this item for reproduction. And like,
Mhm.
because one of the things that was so funny about them, or I thought was really cute, was they were like, we just want to be us. Like, we're enjoying just each other and we
Yeah.
don't want to be parents. And that was this decision at at the beginning that they
Yep.
apparently had already made together, because they had that conversation, or she has that conversation with her friends, the
Yes.
neighbors, whatever. She's like, oh, we don't want that because we're enjoying just being us.
Yeah.
And so then it kind of came out of nowhere. It was right after like her first or second blackout spell,
Yep.
and it was just like, I was so creeped out by that moment too, because I was like, fuck you. Like, you don't get to like come in here. I just been through all this in this tub. You come in here about worried about your fancy party, telling me about making babies. Get out of here.
Oh, like, and it was creepy because you don't want it to be like, "Hey, we should try for," you know what I mean? Like, it should be natural, like, not to talk about. And when he was delivering it, I was like, "What the hell's going on?"
Something's up. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I agree.
I loved it because it kept me hooked. Like,
I
sometimes you
agree.
have movies and it's
Yes.
like, whatever, and something kind of keeps you like mildly interested, but this whole time I'm like, what is it? I need to know.
It's literally like, you ever watch Family Guy?
Yeah.
So you know when they always capture James Woods with the candy and he's like, "Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, that's like this movie in a nutshell. It's like they give you these little Reese pieces and you're like, "Okay, I'm in all the way to the box that slams down on your head at the very
Then you're like, okay, I need the whole bag for that.
end." It's
I need the whole thing. Sorry.
That's
And it
okay.
was if it wasn't the bug flying around, it was gonna be the dog barking
Look,
and
I know. I'm actually no, you know what? I'll save it until we're done. I'm not even gonna jinx myself. I'm not gonna say what I was gonna say. I'll say it later. Yeah, I thought like it really did a great job of keeping me engaged the entire I remember I tried to watch it so because I film upstairs, I made them run my cable up here. I was
yeah.
like, I need to be hardwired upstairs. But because of that, and because I live in a townhouse, I'm surrounded by concrete,
Mhm.
like my internet is like a pain in the ass downstairs. And I tried to watch this downstairs on my TV because I have a bigger TV downstairs, and it
Mhm.
like kept cutting off at like really good points. And I was like, fuck this. I came upstairs and I was like, I'm just gonna watch it in my bed. But my point in saying that is I was so entranced in like the story and like it's like exactly like I said, just kept picking up those little pieces of candy all the way to the end because I wanted to know. And there was never a moment where I stopped caring. Like I
Yeah,
wanted to know.
the whole time, and I'm like
Yeah.
and it just kept building 'cause I'm like, "This is just not going to be good." And, like, you just I oh my god, Chris Pine, his at first, I'm like, because I don't really care. I mean, not that I can say I don't care for Chris Pine, because I don't really
Yeah.
know too much that he's been in, but, like, the first couple interactions with him, I'm like, "He's kind of a douche," but as it went on, he was so sinister, and you knew that there was, like, so much more than that, like, perfect facade, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, when he tells her, like, I forget exactly how he words it, but he tells her, like, "I was hoping you were gonna be, like, the one," or something.
Mhm.
I was like
I know.
I wanted to
Thank
punch him in
you.
that, like, pretty face, like, I just wanted to, like, slug him. 'Ca and because then there was, like, it was, like, every interaction after that, like or even kind of even before, but mostly after, he seems so unbothered. He's
Yeah,
like, "I've got these guys by the balls. There's no way you're gonna be able to say anything that's gonna hurt me or challenge me or do anything that's gonna cause, like, irreparable damage. Like, I'm not worried about you." And there was something like I had chills, like, just even thinking because it's like there's so like you said, there is something so sinister about someone who really thinks of themselves as that untouchable, that there's nothing you can do or find out that
yeah,
could make them, like, less than they are.
and our first hint should have been when he was peeping when they were
When they were having sex.
yeah, I was like when it panned to him, I was like, "Holy like, ew," and then my husband's like, "Oh, shit." Like, he just was, he's like, "That's super creepy." I'm like, "I know," but, like and I knew that was for something, so I'm like,
Mm,
what is he so, like I mean,
yeah.
obviously, some people having sex, but, like, what is he so fixated on? Like, what's going on?
And then that I'm gonna be honest, like, I love her character, I think a lot of stuff every other I don't have complaints about any other decision, but
No.
that decision was weird to me because I mean, I guess maybe the point is it's kind of early on.
Yeah.
She knows being in his house is, like, a really big deal, but it wouldn't matter who that was. If that
No.
had been me, I would've been
Mhm.
like, "Enough," like
No, like, not hap no, exactly.
that was weird, but I guess, I mean, to your point, it does come back into play later, and there's, like, a whole reason behind it and everything, but I did think I was like, I
No,
wouldn't have kept going.
no, and the fact that, like, because and I'm, of course, overanalyzing it. I'm like, the fact that, like, Jack doesn't notice that, and I felt like he must have because, like, to have a presence just, like, walk in, like,
And
you know what I
she
mean?
does physically, at least on camera, she does physically react to
Yeah,
this change. Yeah.
so that's why I was kinda like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that, and I felt like there was a point to it, and obviously, like,
Yeah.
there is one, but I just felt like at that moment he turned, like, the evil notch went up to like a 8 there.
Yeah, and then playing the whole card against each other of like, "Oh, she knew, but she didn't tell you that I was there," and it creates this distrust, which is
Mhm.
super manipulative for this cult leader slash not cult leader, because
Yep.
it's that he uses that because that's part all of that stuff plays into why her husband is not on her side. And he wants to be like that's the hard part is like you can see that he wants to be, but
Yeah.
he's so committed to this life. And then okay, so now we can kind of go towards the ending now, I think. So
Okay.
this is when we start getting into the pieces of the story of like what is actually going on.
Yes.
And my jaw, like as at that whole like last however long it is, I literally was like jaw on the floor. When we start getting the glimpses of her as a nurse.
When that happened, I was like, "Wait," like, because I didn't know, I thought maybe it was
Oh,
her at a
I have
hospital.
goosebumps again.
I know, and then when I saw it was her, I was like, "Wait a second," and then when she and seeing him in the way that he was and all that, I'm like, "Okay," and I was the same way, like, I my face was just like, "Ugh," and then you know what I mean?
I
Like,
was just like, I know, because obviously, like, right away, we know what's going on. He's
yeah,
trying to have this, like, romantic relationship with someone who's carrying all the weight. He doesn't
mhm,
have a job, he's not contributing, he's like, it's just a very different, like, the dynamic is very strained be financially. She's working her ass off, she's exhausted, and, of
yep,
course, the first thing he does is wanna come up behind her, and she's like, "Fuck off me."
yep,
Normal response, I would say.
yep,
Like, and we get these glimpses of things because in the beginning the clips that we get are just of them as a couple, not necessarily what we think is in a different like time or whatever you
yeah,
want to call that.
yeah,
We're like, okay, like they're making promises to each other, this is before he gets this job, like that's what we're led to believe.
yes.
And then we get into this whole like thing where he like, okay, so my head when this part happened, I like lost my mind. I think I was like hitting my bed. I was like so frustrated because
Yeah,
I didn't see this like sci-fi element coming into play at all.
and that's what blew my mind because 'cause I'm like, "This because this shit, it's, like, believable." You know what I mean? Like, the lengths that people would go to have that dream life, it's just
Exactly.
it's crazy to me, and and you see it in people that, like, are one way and then it's completely different, it
Yeah.
happens, and to that degree of what of how he got it, and
The
it's funny too.
drugging her, like,
Yes, and then it's funny too because you see the lifestyle of, in the 50s, 50s,
yeah,
60s, the guy goes to
mhm,
work, the woman stays home, and she cleans all day. She's waiting at the door with her dress and her drink, and
and
then
dinner's ready and whatever.
you see it flipped where she's busting her ass, and he's at home behind a computer screen doing nothing. So
Yep.
it's so funny how it's like
Yeah.
how it's flipped in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we get these scenes where he's like he drugs her, he puts her in the bed, they do the like, ugh, that
Yeah.
whole thing, and then, like, when we start putting the pieces of, like, this is like a program because we've seen movies like this, we've seen what is it, Gamer,
Yep.
Surrogate with Bruce Willis is a similar sci-fi kind of film like this where you live in your body, but it's in, like, a different whatever,
Yep.
and so, the concept in general as a very basic thing is not necessarily new.
No.
It's the delivery of the concept and the setup of the romantic dynamic that made this so unsettling. Like, this was someone she loved and trusted and was doing everything she could to help support in a
Mhm.
time when he was doing nothing but trying to find an easy way out. And
Exactly.
then that's when I started thinking back to all of those happy moments and like all of these things and like him calling them to tell them like you're going to have to take her because she's figuring stuff out. Like
Yeah.
the whole nine, like everything about all of my happy good feelings for them as a couple went the fuck out the window and I was mad at myself that I ever bought into it.
Yes, and I was the same way, and it's just like it made you sick because 'cause you're like, "Holy shit," like, I was fooled, like, you knew something was happening, but you're like,
But not,
"This is, like,
yeah.
to the degree of, like, drugging someone and just, like, laying in a bed, and this is, like, the you know what I mean? Like,
This is your life every day.
mhm, and
And
you know
she's like,
what killed me? She was like, "I" when she was screaming, "I liked working," and she was, "That's my life, and you made the decision," and it's like, the fact that you know, he's making such extraordinarily humongous decisions, like dictating her life. So like you really, it's like she has no control of her life at all, even when she's in control, or even
God,
when
that
she's
part
that
that
was
part had me, like, I was tearing up during that part. That emotional delivery that she did, I mean, like, she did
yeah,
such a great job. I love her, like, I fell in love with her when I watched this movie. I was like, this woman can
yeah,
act her ass off, like, because that scene that you're talking about when she's like, "I love you," like, she's, like, telling him, she's like, "I did all of these things, and, like, this is what you do," like, her,
yeah,
like, figuring it out and watching the emotions flicker between anger and sadness and oh my God, that scene is so good. And then that's of course like leading into going outside, right? She goes outside after that because
because
they're like,
she,
oh shit, like everybody knows now, like
yeah, and that was the scene with Pink, you know, like, and that, because I was like, I wanted the thing to happen, but I was so sad because I'm like, I wish that they could just work it out and like, okay, well, I'm not gonna drug you.
I did the same thing.
You know what I
They
mean?
fucked with us so bad in this movie because I did the same thing. I was like, maybe they could still work it out and live here and be happy and whatever. I did the same thing. And then I'm like, Angel, can you please get a fucking grip on
Because, like, I would not be okay with that. So I'm like, why am I even
No.
like, no. But
And
then
then drugging her for, like, fucking months, leaving her in a bed to basically rot. No,
and then
like, but
all these women, and then like, and then that part with Bunny when she's
yes.
leaving and she's like, "Did you know about this?" And when she starts having her breakdown, and then when they talked about the kids, that broke my heart about losing them, and that's the only way she could see him. Because then you're like, "Okay, another perspective of this isn't right, but I
I
understand."
know. You're just like, "Oh my god, she would rather live that lie every
Yeah.
single day just to see her kids because 'cause they're not alive in the real world anymore." That was like that was so smart I have chills again. That was like character building at its finest because to your point, we didn't trust her and we didn't like her anymore.
Yeah.
And then she says, "I do this because this is the only way I can see that." And my heart, I mean, it was already breaking, but it fucking shattered when she said that because I was like, me too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
drug me and throw me in a bed if it's the only way I can see my baby that's not alive anymore. That part broke my heart. But then she does kind of get a little bit of points when she does try to like help. But
Yes,
it
and I
was
was like,
like,
"Okay, you're
oh
like,
my,
you're redeeming yourself and you're doing what you should have done," but, like,
yeah,
that part destroyed me. Like, that I was already so upset about everything that transpired because I knew it wasn't gonna be a happy ending, but I would just
sure.
I wanted it to kind of, like, not be that, and then that happened, and I was just like, "Okay, now, like, sorry for you, but now these motherfuckers need to be, you know, we need to fuck these
Right.
people up."
Because at this point he's dead, right? She's already hit him with that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
He's like out for the count. The other guy that you talked about his real name, what's his
uh,
name? The funny
Chris
guy.
Nick Kroll. Oh,
Nick
yes,
Kroll.
yeah,
So he comes out and gives like an amazing performance as well, and like trying to sway and stop her and all these things. And so
yeah.
then we get this like really cool chase scene in a car. I'm like, what is this movie right now?
The cars were so amazing too. I'm like, I would love to do,
Sure.
but I loved that scene when everyone's walking out and
Oh,
just having that, like, eerie, and all the women are just, like, staring at the husbands, and you're just like, "Yes!" Like,
yeah.
you're like, just like, "Fuck yeah," and you're so excited, and then at the same time, you're like, "Fuck them up," and then you're like,
That's
"Get out of
right.
there." You know what I mean? Like, it was so intense, and I was like, I feel like when I was watching by myself, I was like, "Go!"
I was doing the same thing. I was so wiggly, like, the whole
Mhm.
time I was watching the last, like, 20 minutes of this stupid movie. I say stupid lovingly. Like, I was, like, so invested, and then we get, like, the car scene and another beautiful shot. Oh my god, like and then the men are coming after her, and I'm, like, literally screaming at her. I'm like, "Please make it. Please make it to the top of that stupid mountain thing.
I know.
Please make it. Please." Like, ugh.
And it was like I love how it was done because, you know, in movies where it's just, like, close the whole time, but, like, you see her and you think that she has, like, leverage on them, and then you just see,
And
like,
then
the
you
car and
yes.
they're running up the hill, and you're like, "Ah!" She's barefoot, and it's like, oh my god. But I you know
And
what? You know what's so funny is when you see her barefoot, I'm thinking to myself, I would be booking it. Like, you just feel the intensity of, like, how determined she
yeah,
is, and, like, put yourself in
yeah.
her non-literal shoes. running
Yeah.
those rocks, you know what I mean? Like, you're running for your life. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I like, that scene was so intense. I was the same way.
Yeah. And then you wouldn't.
And none of that scene would have even have worked if they hadn't done such a great job building up the story and the character involvement. Because I was so invested in
Yeah,
her survival and her success. Like, I was invested. I needed that as a viewer,
yeah.
and that's, like, just a testament again to, like, how well this was written and shot because, like, that scene doesn't work if the rest of the movie didn't work so well, you know?
I absolutely agree, and I just feel like every piece of that movie was perfectly placed to curate this movie because this movie to me was
Yes.
like chef's kiss. Like, it was so good.
So good. I
Mhm.
feel the same way. I was happy with every like I genuinely I couldn't even tell you why it's not a perfect movie. I think just because my standards for perfect movies are like, but like I don't think there's anything that could be added. I don't think there's anything I would change.
No.
I genuinely I loved this movie and I was pissed after I saw it and I was so in love with it. I
Mhm.
think I watched Barbarian first. I keep comparing it to that because Barbarian was like way hyped.
And way hyped, and you had no idea. So I think that's why it's comparable because with Don't Worry, Darling, you're like, okay, don't really know, but that has to be some sort of like
Mhm.
whatever.
That's a good
And then,
point. Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then you have Barry, and you're like, okay, so I don't really know much about this, and I don't really know much about this. And everyone was dogging this movie, and everyone was praising Barbarian.
Right. And
Like,
I didn't hate Barbarian,
yeah,
but I don't get it. Like, I don't get everybody's like, "Oh my god, this, like, life-changing." Is it though? Like, I feel like it's just a bunch of previously done idea you know what? That's another rabbit hole. Anyway, when I was done watching this, I literally posted about it on Twitter, and I was like, "Why are we talking about Barbarian and not talking about Don't Worry, Darling? Y'all
absolutely.
are crazy."
Y'all are nuts. But no,
This
it's
movie was fucking good.
I felt the same way. And then after like I literally had to sit there and be like, did I watch the same movie that everyone else did because of how badly it was talked about? And I'm like,
No.
and it totally confirmed that most of the stuff that came out that everyone raved about, other than, well, I mean, I loved Terrifier too, and I think
Yeah,
that was well received. But like this one, it was just too because Terrifier 2 was my number one, but I felt like this one was so close because it's two
yeah.
different ends of the spectrum, but they're
Sure.
perfect. Like I think that they're so well done in the regards of what they are in horror. Like this for
Yeah.
psychological horror is magnificent, and then for
I know what you
slasher,
mean. Yeah, just
you know what
being
I
2
mean?
different subgenres essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this film. I don't know how like I was, like, mad at people. I try not to be that way, but I was, like, mad at people for not loving it. I was like, "You're nuts." Sometimes you can have opinions, but, like, this one's wrong. Like, this is a good movie.
The same way, and I saw someone post about it, and they're like, "I just wasted 2 hours of my life watching that movie." I'm like, "What?" Like, I wanna watch it again.
It's so good.
And that's the
I
movie, like,
was in awe of this for, like, days after I saw it because I went in feeling like I would like it, right? But
mhm,
I think what helped, I will say this, on the side of people not, like, raving about it, I
mhm.
think it sometimes helps because then you go in with a little more neutral expectation, which allows you to be impressed a little bit easier, whereas,
Yes.
like, I went into Barbarian hearing everyone, like, freak out about how great it was, and I was like, sure,
What?
okay. But this one was one that was a lot more, like, level grounded. There were people that I saw that really did enjoy it, but
Mhm.
there were a lot of people I was seeing that were like, "Yeah, no, I'm, like, really disappointed in this, blah, blah, blah." So going into it a little more, like, even Steven, I was like, I don't know, maybe that helped. I don't know. I try not to listen to that shit anyway, but I think sometimes it's hard to ignore hype about something in
Absolutely.
this community because we're such active members in it.
Yes, and I feel like whenever there is hype about a movie, I try to just not engage and not
I
I don't wanna say
know.
participate in it, but because, like, a good example, and I know I'll probably get a lot of flack from saying this, but I really enjoyed, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix just because
You're
everyone
like, "Let me get out my words."
everyone's like, "Oh, she's canceled, like, no taste." When it was came out, everyone's like, it wasn't good enough to get picked up by a big movie whatever the reasoning was.
Sure.
When I went in watching it, I had my wine, I had some cheese, and I watched it by myself, and it was a Texas Chainsaw movie. Like, there was gore, The pace was decent. I really wasn't invested in the characters because why would
Sure.
you invest in a slasher movie like this? Do you know what I mean? Like, I
That's
went
fair.
in with 0
Yeah.
expectations, and I ended up just I mean, it wasn't like something I'd add to my watch list over and over again, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was a fun watch.
Yeah, I think it had I wasn't on, like, the I didn't really love it, but I
Yeah.
think some of that is more because I'm not, like, a super big, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan in general,
Yeah,
but I do think it definitely had entertaining moments. I think it had problems, and there were some things that I think could have been done better, but I think with
absolutely.
what they had, there were some entertaining points, but, yeah,
Yeah.
this one, I don't know. I think this one just I'm just amazed at that there's not more people talking about it. I think just I don't know. I just there's so many there's like I said, not a single thing that I didn't like about this movie. There's not a single weak performance. There's
Nope.
no lull. It had an intriguing story, amazing characters. The
Yep.
ending to me was super surprising. I don't think that that ending is predictable. I feel like if someone were to be like, "Oh, I totally predicted that," I'd be like, "You're a liar." Like I don't believe you because there's no way with all of the side stories and things going on you can narrow it down to, oh, he works for a company. Oh, this is what the company does. Oh, this is what, like, there's no fucking way you could do that. There's no
No.
way.
No, and like you said, anyone that said that they called it bullshit because you did not
It's,
we'll say it right now, like, absolutely not. But do you think that this is one that, like, after time and after it's kind of like, sat in without, like, all the hype around it, maybe people will, like, get into it and it might be a little bit more like, over time? Or do you think that this is just like, you know
yeah. I want to believe in my heart that this is one that will resurface like Season of the Witch and people will all of a sudden love it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will. I think because of the themes and some of the people involved in it, I think it's gonna probably stay about where it is. That's my professional prediction. But like I feel, I would love for people to have more love for it, but I don't know. I think part of the problem with movies that came out this last year is there were so many of them. There were so many big hitters. I mean,
Mhm.
indie, this was a 2022 was a great year for indie as well. I'm not arguing that it wasn't, but there was
Yeah.
a lot of big players this year. You had Scream 5 that came out, you had
Yep.
the new Texas Chainsaw, you had Halloween Ends, you had this, you had Barbarian. There's a shit ton. The Black Phone. There was a
My
lot of like, yeah, big
Yep.
hitters that came out and it's hard, I think, for us sometimes to focus on the ones that like go back and focus on the ones from such a great year. You know what I mean? Like, so I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, I'm hoping. Like, I would love that. I love this movie. I think if you're watching this at this point and you were not a fan, I think you should rewatch it.
Totally, because I think that just going in I don't know. The thing that gets me is when I read, some stuff on it, the reception was they felt like it was recycled, like they've seen this before. To me, I felt like I haven't seen this. I mean, I know there's been, like
Really?
yeah, like, I'll screenshot it and I'll send it to you afterwards. It was, like, on Wikipedia, but someone was, like, going off about how it's recycled through, like, the Stepford Wives and what was the other one? And I guess there was like a Stepford Wives tone-ish, but that wasn't do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel like I've seen something as original
I
as this in a long time.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. So for me, I think that there are probably like obvious influences,
Right. But most
obviously,
but I feel
but
like
I think it's hard to say like I don't know of a horror movie that I've watched in the last like I don't know, 10 years, 15, 20, I don't know, long time that like didn't have like obvious influences from something else. Like I don't think that there's anything you can I don't know. I feel like taking jabs at something because it does have similar things does not like to me doesn't discredit what they were able to turn it into.
exactly, and there has to be some sort of influence because why do people do things? Because they wanna make something themselves, but obviously they reference, like, I don't know, I felt like that was such a bold statement, and they didn't really have anything to hold it up with because this, again, seemed original to me. Like, I feel like I haven't watched a movie like this where I was like, "Oh, that's what's going on," and it was
No,
completely different.
I agree. And it's like I said, I mean, there's obviously things that it made we both said there are things that it made us think of, but not as like an entire movie.
or like
I
a
mean,
rip.
that would be like taking a movie that has like, I don't know, like a line from another movie and then being like, "Oh, well, they obviously like," and then discrediting everything else about it, and I don't think that works. I don't think that's a valid argument.
No, that would be like having, like, Art the Clown came out and having, like, Bill the Goof.
Right.
Like, you know that it's completely copying,
Yeah.
like,
I
trying to be
yeah.
at the level, but I don't feel like this had anything of that whatsoever, and, like, I don't even think I don't think I've seen the Stepford Wives, but I didn't feel that.
I've seen
Uh,
it a long time ago.
yeah, so I
Well,
don't
but that's the compl but even still, the only thing that it had in common is the leaving for work at the same time. That's it.
and being married and having, like, a
And
group of
being
wives,
married,
that's yeah,
like, that's literally it.
and and, like, the time period that they were aiming for, I felt like that happened, so, like, it's not far off the mark,
It's
so
not yeah, it's not yeah,
I think it's just people fishing, and I feel like,
looking for something to complain about
yes, and with me nowadays, like, I'd rather just find things to be happy, like, that I
to
enjoy
enjoy.
instead of, like, pointing stuff out and be like, "Well, I didn't like this, and I didn't like that," because, I mean, how fun would that be to
And
watch movies?
yeah, and I feel like there's plenty of movies that have a lot of things that I don't like.
Mhm.
But I still will admit it was entertaining. Like, I gave, like, the new Texas Chainsaw, like, 3 out of 10 stars,
But I understand that because it's
but
so
I
enjoyable.
yeah, but I was able to still look at it and say, "Yes, there were still parts that made me laugh. There were still parts that made me cringe. There were still,"
Yep,
like and that's the thing at the end of the day, like, movies, horror or not, doesn't matter. They're entertainment, and when you
yep,
start doing that, when you start nickel and diming, like, like your opinions and like picking it apart like that, how do you enjoy anything? Like,
and that's what I mean, like, nowadays, it's like you have to pick your battles and, like, I don't know, like what you like, and if you didn't like it, then whatever, but I don't know, I just felt
I
like
think yeah, be willing to have those conversations because I love like I will tell you not I mean, obviously not like all the time, but a lot of times I watch movies and if I don't like them or I'll be honest with you, I don't get them because that happens.
yeah,
Um, I having conversations with other people really will make you look at films differently. Like one of the things okay, so Hellraiser was another really big one that came out this past year. And
yep,
so Hellraiser was one that like I'm not like a really big Hellraiser fan, but I like Hellraiser. I'm fine. Like I like the first one, right? But
same,
anyway, but like I was excited about it. I was
mhm,
excited about, Jamie being the priestess. I was excited about the gore and I was excited.
yeah,
But there was a lot of shit I went over my head when I watched this movie and I had to have someone explain it to me. And but then you know what? Once they did, I was like, that was a pretty good movie.
yes, and I that's what I love about this community is you could not maybe understand something, enjoy it,
Yeah.
whatever, but when you have a conversation with someone and see it in a different light, then you're like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I didn't look at it that way," and I'm always, like, open to people. Like, I love hearing what people enjoyed about something because
Me too.
I
Yeah.
vocalize what I love and I talk about it. I wanna hear what you love, and
Yeah.
maybe I can appreciate it for that, but, like, and Hellraiser, I was super, super stoked for that, but I
Yeah.
felt like I didn't finish it just because I felt a little bit like
Oh.
I was happy that it was story building, and I was happy that there was an like, substance and characters and stuff like that, which I do have to finish watching. It's not like I was like, I don't wanna watch it, but I
Yeah.
kind of, lost and I fell asleep, during the van scene, and that's, like, right in the middle, right?
Oh.
I think that was, like, right in the middle? Yeah.
That's the part I fell asleep at. I'm not even joking. I
Mhm.
fell asleep and I woke up and it was like on my normal screen or whatever for like the end of the movie. It goes back to like Hulu or whatever it is that it does. And
Yep.
I was like, oh shit. And so
Yep.
I like had to go.
I did the
I
same thing.
cannot believe you fell asleep to I fell asleep during these.
I was trying so hard too because 'cause I'm like, "It's gonna get
I
better."
did the same thing. I was like adjusting and I was like, okay, like it'll be
Yeah.
fine. I can make it. I'm an adult. I can make it. And then I was like out.
Yes. I always do that. I'll, like, close my eyes. I'm like, "For 5 seconds, I can do this,"
That
and
is
then
so
next thing you know,
funny.
drool at the mouth, but I do I do wanna finish it because I do like you said, I like Hellraiser, and I wanna see a different take on it.
Yeah, and I think it achieved that. I don't think it I don't think Hellraiser was like a life-changing experience. I didn't love it. I liked it.
And that's good. I
Um,
mean,
and
at
if
least
and if they made another one, I would watch it, you
yeah,
know, especially if it's on a streaming service I already have. Why not, right? But it just was
exactly.
like it's so funny because like with having so much come out this last year, we're getting so many opinions on this shit. Like so many people are like on their letterbox and like
I can't do you have Letterbox?
I do, but I'm horrible about it. I do have Don't Worry Darling on there though, because I was not fucking around. I was like, people need to watch this movie.
You'd be going on there
But
being
I'm
like, "Motherfucker."
horrible. I did like one weekend where I watched like 6 movies from 2022 because I was like, I gotta get caught up. It's like the end of the year, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And I watched like 6 movies and I was like every single one. And then like by the 4th movie, I was like, I'm just gonna give it stars. Like it's
'Cause
like a
you have
writing
to, like,
thing.
process it and then try to, like, write it in your own
Oh shit, I
opinion.
know. Yeah.
I was the same way. I think I got a couple, like, big ones after, like, The Sadness, because everyone was raving about The Sadness, and
Yeah.
that
That
made me
was my number one for last year.
that made me feel a certain way. That I was like, because you know,
Yep.
when people are like, "This is extreme and it's super gory," and that type, I'm like, "Well, I don't know," and I watched it by myself, and I was like, "Holy fuck."
I
Like,
think I watched it by myself too.
yeah. I I don't it's not that I didn't think that my husband would watch it, but I'm weird. Like, when they go to bed, I'm like, "Okay, what horror movie am I gonna watch? Am I gonna watch
Dude, I
right now?"
hear you. I'm like, that's your you time. I get that. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I think like I I think the I read a comic book called Crossed,
Mhm.
and this is the sadness is it's not the same thing, but it's really similar. So
Yeah.
some of the stuff that like happened as far as like the sexual things and like some of that stuff I was actually sort of already prepared for because I had already read it in a comic book with very detailed pictures. And so I was like, which is so different than seeing it in motion for some reason. It's for some
Mhm.
reason seeing it in motion adds like a level of discomfort that like you're not prepared for. But I
Yeah.
loved the sadness though. I thought that was a good one.
It was I enjoyed it because I the take on it was very different, and
Mhm.
usually, like, I'm not one just to pick, like, a extreme gore, like,
I'm not like that necessarily either. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I can take it, like, I loved Terrifier and I loved Terrifier 2, and there was,
Mhm.
like, over the top gore in that, but, like,
Yeah.
this one, I mean, we won't get into and I won't, but, like, just I have to say eyeball.
Yeah.
Like, I would pause it, and I'm like, "What?"
And you know what's and I will say this, what's so smart about that shot though is that you
Mhm.
don't see it, but you feel like you do.
And I
There's
felt
this thing about, like, what happens off camera and it being so well shot that you think in your head you saw it,
yeah.
but you didn't see it. Like and you know what's and that's like, we were talking about Texas Chainsaw earlier. The
Mhm.
original Texas Chainsaw Massacre does the exact same thing.
You
You
don't see
think
any
you
blood.
see so much more shit than you actually see, and that, my friends, is effective filmmaking. Because like
It totally is, and on that with the sadness, like you said, it's funny because you saw the gore throughout the whole goddamn movie, and then
yeah,
that one scene, and it's so explicit, and you're just like and they panned up for that, and it was perfect because I feel like if you saw it, you'd just be like, "Ugh,"
too
but
much.
when I was just like, "That's
It
really happening."
towed a very dangerous line between too much and not too much, like a very I mean, like
And people said that that was their point where they shut it off. People that
Oh
usually
god, I know somebody that cut it off at the fryer burn, the very
oh,
first thing that happens,
I
because it
mean,
was rough. It was
yeah,
rough.
it was,
I
and that
did warn her. I told her ahead of time, I was like, this may not be your cup of tea, like, it's brutal, like and that's not like a I'm so cool because I can sit through it. It's everybody in horror has their limitations.
it's true,
My
and
limitations is shit with kids. That's my limitation. And rape. I don't like to watch a bunch of stuff with like on-screen rape. But like everybody's got their limitations, but I knew there was going to be a lot of people that weren't going to be able to get through the sadness.
yeah, and but, like, again, something like that, it was totally disclosed, and I was just like, "You know what? I'm gonna do it," because so many people talked about it, and I didn't wanna be that person
There
that
was a
didn't
lot
watch
of hype around that one. Yep.
yeah, that old
Yeah.
man,
He
he
was
was
like the worst villain ever in a horror movie. Like, what the fuck? He was, yeah. If you're
yeah.
still watching at this point, you should go watch The Sadness because it's really good. It's
really
fucked
is.
up, but it is
Yeah,
good. I will give you that warning. It is brutal. They are not joking. No one is making shit up about how brutal this movie is. Like, oh, people were throwing up in the theaters. I would believe that about The Sadness. I really would. It was really
absolutely.
good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, cool. Well, I think that's all our thoughts on Don't Worry, Darling. Yeah, this was fun. I'm really glad that we were able to make this work.
I am too. I've been, like, dying to come on and
Oh, I
chat with
know.
you, and I'm like, "Yes, someone equally loves it as much as I do."
I felt the same way. I was like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about this." And, like, I've been, like, so excited to talk about it because again, like, it is one of my favorite movies from last year. I love it. I'm
You know,
like, so this was a lot of fun. So
and then
thank
we'll
you
have
for
to
coming
do
on.
well, thank you for having me. We'll have to do 7. Remember we
We
talked about
talked about yeah, that's right.
we should
We
totally do
will, because I haven't talked about 7 on the channel before. We will. Also, I think our flow of conversation would also work really well for a live if you were ever willing to do one of those with me.
I
Because we
would
just
love to.
yeah.
I know. Previous to this hour-long episode, we talked for what, 45 minutes, so
Like, almost an hour. We've been
yeah.
talking for almost 2 hours.
You say that you tell me when to be there, and I would love to do a live with you. I think
Yeah,
we'd have
let's do well, I'm starting to do them monthly, so I'll do, like, 1 a month.
Yep.
So I think I have, like, the next couple figured out or whatever, but no, definitely. I was thinking that. I was like, our conversation, like, I think we would go really well, but
Yes,
yeah. Well, that's our episode on Don't Worry, Darling. Once again, I'm going to put all of Pretty Killer podcast stuff, information, where to find them and stuff, in the description for this episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for Saturday Horror Movie Reviews. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great week coming up, and we'll see you in the next one.